Hi, it's Cynthia Hilston at cynthiahilston.com. I'm back to share with you another video along our journey of going from writers to authors. If you'd be so kind as to hit that subscribe button below and the bell beside it so you'll be notified whenever I put out new content every Monday, that would be much appreciated. You will be notified about videos that I put out every Monday. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the importance of reading to be a writer. Now, this may sound obvious, however, sometimes things that seem the most obvious may not always come to mind. Here is my kitty, Tater. By the way, he's been sitting on my lap. First thing, read as many books as you can. As many books as you can get your hands on. If you're a writer, chances are you love to read. So I just encourage you to keep reading and reading and reading. Just because you start writing does not mean you should stop reading by any means. Keep reading. So read in as many genres as you can. Maybe your favorite genre is romance, and that's what you want to write. A lot of people like to read the kinds of books they want to write. Well, that's great. But you'd be surprised if you might pick up a psychological thriller and read it, and you might fall in love with a new genre. You don't know what you're missing out on until you actually try something new. And you never know, maybe reading a psychological thriller will get your heart pumping and you will be inspired to write a psychological thriller. That happened to me. My books were historical fiction, romance, family sagas, family life, stuff based like that, with the conflict always being self versus self, until I started writing a psychological thriller with an actual villain, yes. A total departure from the other 5 stories I have written. And I'm loving it. So just broaden your horizon as much as possible by reading in as many genres as possible as you can stomach. So why should you read so much, though? You also want to see what other authors are doing in their stories. What works, what doesn't. Now, this is a matter of opinion a lot of times because certain people are going to be drawn towards certain kinds of characters over others. A lot of my characters tend to be highly flawed protagonists who have a lot of self-doubt, who have a lot of internal issues that they need to work through. That's why my conflict is self versus self, because it's always something within them that is holding them back, that they need to overcome before they can move on to, bettering themselves or making themselves happier. It could be, grief. It could be a struggle with alcoholism. It could be a bad relationship, stuff like that. But there are some people who do not like those kinds of characters at all. Some people want to read about somebody who's like a superhero, somebody who maybe at least has like a superpower, who is saving the world or the universe. Some people want to read a fantasy and a big saga, so it could depend on what kind of character you're drawn to, what kind of time period you're drawn to. My first 3 books were all set in like the early to mid 20th century, but then after that I started keeping things in modern day, meaning like 2017, 18, around there. So if you're watching this way in the future, what I mean by modern day is when I actually wrote the story. And some of it could be setting. My stuff is always set on Earth, real life. There's no magic in my stuff. It's not on some faraway planet or in some fairy tale land. So you have to look at just what you like in a book and what you don't like. But the more variety you read, the more you're going to be exposed to that. You're also going to be exposed to how language is being used. You're going to be exposed to, if you were going to write a YA, it's going to be told in a different way than something that's for an older audience. If you were reading Charles Dickens, you're going to find the language different 150 years ago for sure than it is today. But maybe if you want to write something that is kind of in the style of Charles Dickens, then you should be reading his stuff to figure that out. It also, and I kind of said this before, it exposes you to a variety of character types. So it's just, the more exposure you can get to variety in general, the better. And I'm going to stress this again, never ever stop reading, even when you are deep, like up to your elbows, up to your eyes in writing your story, okay? You must always keep reading. Yeah, you can take a day or two off, that's okay. But you got to keep reading because it's vital to your continued writing career. Reading. Now, if you're writing fiction, which is pretty much what I'm addressing here, I'm obviously talking about reading a lot of fiction books. I also am going to suggest, though, that you read blogs or books on the craft of writing. That can be very beneficial. One book that I would definitely recommend every writer should read is Stephen King's On Writing. Even if you are not a fan of Stephen King, this book is not a horror book, okay, or a thriller. It is a book about writing, and since he has been a very successful author, as anybody who's breathing knows, then I suggest you read Stephen King's On Writing. I will put a link below to its Amazon page. This book has been very helpful to me and to some of my other writing friends, and so that was my number one recommendation. There are books out there, though, on character development, on plot. You know, there are so many books, but maybe if you don't want to get bogged down by reading a whole book on the craft of writing, then find some blogs to follow that talk about the craft of writing. There are, of course, that's part of what I'm doing here, so check out my blog for sure. But I also would recommend A Writer's Path, and I will put that blog link below in the description box as well. I have been a guest contributor, I have been a guest contributor on that blog in the past. And so these are all guest contributor posts, and people talk about all kinds of stuff with regards to writing. So these are things that are going to take you 5 minutes to read if you don't want to be reading a whole book. So that's pretty much it. That wraps it up for today's video on the importance of reading to be a writer. So thank you so much. And if you're interested, I do have 3 books up on Amazon. The link is here and below if you would like to check that out. I really appreciate it. Thanks again. Until next time. Bye.